QuickBooks Online 2022 OneNote presentation, QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Desktop. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online 2022. If you have access to OneNote, would like to follow along, we're in the icon on the left-hand side, Topic Introduction, the 1011 QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Desktop tab. Also take a look at the Immersive Reader tool. The Topic Introductions will be in the text area too, with the same name, the same number, but with transcripts. Transcripts that can be translated into multiple different languages and either listened to or read in them. We have the same name and number as the presentations as well. The Topic Introductions designed to give an introduction to the topic, provide screenshots, links where applicable, give accounting background to complement the presentations, and can be used to follow along with the presentations if you don't have access to the software at that time. Closing the icon on the left-hand side, we're going to be comparing and contrasting the desktop version and the online version. This course focusing in on the online version. What's best for you will be dependent on your perspective, so you might think about this from the lens of an accountant working in a company, a business owner, or a professional bookkeeper. Now we'll go into each of these items in more detail in the presentation. We'll just kind of list them out here, but even just looking at QuickBooks software instead of just software in general for accounting software can be kind of overwhelming because there's a lot of different options that you have. The main category you want to be breaking out between first is really, do you want an online software or do you want the desktop software? Once you've narrowed that down, then you could go into the options that are more detailed online or on the desktop. These are items that are at the bottom of the QuickBooks page that is owned by Intuit, and this is just a list of their QuickBooks items on their website. So here's just a list of some of the difference between the desktop version and the online version. So the desktop version used to be something that you would purchase, you would have static on your computer, and you wouldn't have to pay in a subscription model. They are moving to a subscription model, so I believe you still have access to the old kind of fashion up till 2021. It might have passed at this point in time. If you get older software, you might still be able to get access to the item that will just be on your desktop. They are then moving on to the subscription model, but we're still going to have something that's going to be actually on the machine on your computer, as opposed to something that's going to be accessed through a web-based type of access. Now, the other big difference is when you're on the desktop version, it's kind of like you have the Microsoft Word where you have multiple different files that you can open with the one program. You'll also note that the Microsoft did a similar kind of thing, even though it's a kind of a desktop kind of item that's going to be on your computer. They went to the subscription model, so that's kind of the way these softwares are going. But like with the Microsoft Word, you can have multiple files that are opened. In the QuickBooks, you can have multiple company files with just the one subscription, and that could be really good for a certain type of bookkeeper in a type of business that you're going to be setting up. It's also quite good for practice and teaching purposes. When you're on the online, you must set up a new online account for each new company file. So as you set up the new companies, you're going to be setting up basically a new account through the online. It'll have its own kind of website. You'll have to log into it and so on through, of course, the internet. So we have the static backups versus the data stored on the Intuit servers. The classical use of the backups is so that you don't lose your data. And the fact that they're backed up on the servers for Intuit on the online version means that you're pretty secure against losing your data. However, there's other reasons for backups as well. Backups could be great for testing something out. If you're concerned if it's going to be a problem, you have a backup and you can restore it. That's really nice for the desktop version. It's also quite nice to be able to share your data without giving access to everything in your books, although you can give restricted access to the online version as well. It's also really good for teaching and things like that, because you could then restore the backup files to a specific point in time. So if you're just talking about losing your data, the online is pretty good in that sense because you got the servers backing up. But if you're using the backups for other types of things to test things out, then the static backups on the desktop work quite well. Look and feel is different. The home page and the flowchart, the look and feel of the desktop version will stay the same for a long period of time. It's been pretty static for quite some time. The look and feel of the online is going to be changing all the time. So the desktop is going to be a lot more consistent in terms of the standard look and feel. The online, they're going to be A/B testing, just like a sales web page. It's not a sales page, it's your QuickBooks file, but in a similar sense as testing where should the buttons go, what's the best look and feel, how's it going to look on a phone, how's it going to look when things change and people are using different sizes of screens and whatnot when they're using tablets, phones, computers. And all that stuff means that the look and feel is going to be changing constantly, and you just got to be okay with the changing items that are going to happen with the online version, which could be good. It has its pros and cons. And then the desktop should have a more static look and feel because it's on the desktop computer and you're not going to have as much change in that sense. So the download of bank transactions can take extra step. So the online version has the bank feeds does them a little bit better than possibly the desktop, in part because you're already online and you can get that online access and direct access to the bank feeds. You also might be able to connect to some institutions that I don't believe you can connect to at this point in time with the desktop. You also might have some connectivity with regards to web type applications. If you're doing like some online services might work better with the online situation. The desktop situation usually works better with the inventory. So if you have more advanced like inventory needs that you're going to be dealing with, then in that case, you might want to you might have some situations where the desktop can be more beneficial. So those are some of the major differentiating factors. Again, if you're online and you're using the bank feeds, both systems can use bank feeds, but on the desktop, you got to connect to the online, and it doesn't seem to be quite as seamless of a process with the desktop, and you have some limitations with some institutions. The online seems to be a little bit more fluid in that connection process. And again, the desktop version, when you get into more complexity with regards to like inventory situations, maybe one of its more stronger points typically. We'll go into some of these items in more detail in the presentation.